Everyone that could be a contender in the SEC Eastern Division will be taking their shots at Georgia. Kentucky is next up. And of course, they're coming off an impressive performance at home against Florida. Got Anthony Dasher on the line from UGAsports.com. That you can find that on Rivals, the Rivals platform for Georgia athletics. Anthony, how's it going?
Going well.
Well, that Auburn game was similar to the South Carolina game in some respects, in
Sure.
that it stayed closer than many people expected, although this was more of a back and forth defensive struggle. Auburn certainly put up a nice fight. And what surprised me about it was not that it was a decent game, a good game. And of course, until Carson Beck and Brock Bowers put together a drive with about 4 minutes left, it was a tie game, that Auburn was able to do that without being able to throw the ball downfield. They were still able to scrap together a game where they almost pulled it off against number one.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn had a lot of success with quarterback runs. Got both those guys on the perimeter, and they had, I think, what was it, like 125 yards between them. I think what was Auburn rushed, I think 209, 213, something like that, total. But perimeter runs, really hurt them. And Georgia really scuffled, against run. That's the most yards I believe anybody has had against Georgia, like over 2 years. So that's an area they definitely need to, figure out and get straightened out with Kentucky coming to town after what they did to the Gators last week on the ground.
We've talked so many times, as anybody who covers college football, and especially the SEC, about Brock Bowers, but it's not just the skill set and the physical intimidation factor of just having that size, speed combination and those incredible skills at tight end. It's that he shows up at the right time. And he certainly took over the game for as much as a tight end can take over a game when they needed him on Saturday.
Now he's incredible. I know it's not just me saying that. I mean, the score was what was it? It was 20-17. Georgia put together a field goal drive, and during that drive, Brock had like back-to-back one-handed catches, just plays that really kind of, plays we've seen for him before, obviously, but they still kind of, make you drop your jaw when you see them happen, there in person. And, Georgia go down and tie the game. And then like you said, with about 4 minutes to go, they drive down again, and Carson hits Brock, who once gets the ball in his hands, if he's in any kind of one-on-one coverage, if you're not really manning up on him, he's going to come down with the football and just outrun you, and that's what he did to that Tiger secondary to give Georgia that win.
And I can't imagine being a lighter safety or a corner being in the open field when he gets a head of steam and trying to get in front of him and trying to bring him down.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, he's 235 pounds. He actually, when you see him out of his football, pads, he's not the most intimidating looking guy, but man, I tell you, once he's on the field, he's just got a skill set that, like, again, I've been covering his team for over 25 years. I've yet to see in person, myself. I know, Coach Stoops at Kentucky, who was actually at Arizona when Rob Gronkowski was there, was asked to make a comparison. He said, "Hey, yeah, there are some comparisons, but also some things that when I look at Brock Bowers, I'm seeing things I've never seen before." That's saying a lot to me when it comes from a coach who was, at the school where Rob Gronkowski was at one point in time. That just kind of gives you an indication of how good this kid really is.
Yeah, to compare him against arguably the greatest pass-catching tight end in the history of the NFL is crazy. Carson Beck, of course, was able to lead this team down the field when it counted the most. You mentioned the field goal drive to tie it, and then boom, they get the ball back, and he leads the touchdown drive. And the numbers were good. I watched the game. I thought he delivered the ball. I thought he looked poised. It was not an offensive showcase, so they did struggle at times, but I don't really point that to him necessarily. It's not like he played a perfect game, but I certainly, under the circumstances of one of the more difficult places to play in college football, Auburn being amped up for this game, playing a great defensive plan, that he played a really good game.
Yeah, the second half, he completed 16 of 20 passes for 235 yards. And I don't have the numbers in front of it. He was converted most of Georgia's third downs. I mean, and he's like you said, in that environment, as loud as that crowd was, I think you got to tip your hat to him. I think we really saw Carson Beck grow up a lot in this game, because that was really, in my estimation, one of the one or two questions that remained was, how is this guy going to perform on the road in the SEC? As crazy as these crowds can be, could he execute? Could Georgia, offense perform? And I think we saw, in that fourth quarter, that the answer to that is exactly yes. Yes, it can.
So, Anthony, as you well know, one of the big questions across college football right now is what's wrong with Georgia? Are they not as good as they used to be, or are they going to be able to turn it on when they need to? And my thought is that this is still a tremendous football team and still might be the best football team in America. That has yet to be seen. They're certainly one of the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, the only thing that I will say is when they have struggled in previous seasons or had closer than expected games against the likes of Mizzou last year, that's the classic one that's brought up, they had already posted victories that were extremely impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this team, South Carolina and Auburn would be the 2 best teams that they've played. And they're mid-level, maybe to be kind to SEC teams, maybe on the downside of that. And now, so this is now 2 games like this, and there are no real emphatic statement games under their belts yet.
And that just goes back again to what we've talked about before, the slow offensive starts that the team has gotten off to. I mean, that's happened now in all 5 games that Georgia has played. They have yet to, play, 4 full quarters of football. That's why I'm curious to see if, we saw what Carson did in the second half. Will Georgia start now to maybe allow him to be more aggressive early on, start trying to jump on some of these teams early as opposed to kind of letting the game, come to them, so to speak? Can they be more aggressive? And then we'll see what happens. No, to answer your, original question, no, I don't think right now that anyone can with any, realm of reality can say this team is as good, as the last, 2 years. Again, lost a ton of players to the NFL, not making a single excuse. They recruited extremely well, but it's not quite the team that we've seen the last few years. And if they are to win it, they're going to have to go about it a different way, and that includes improving on the offense here pretty quickly. I am curious to see what happened now. They do have Ladd McConkey coming back. Ladd is, other than Carson Beck, Ladd McConkey may be the second most important offensive player, receiver type on this team. And with him back now, I think that's going to give Carson Beck another little point of familiarity that he's going to really be able to take advantage of. And I'm interested to see now how the offense can take another step now that all the pieces from these wide outs to go along with Brock Bowers are there at his disposal.
McConkey with 4 catches in his first action this season. Now we look at this Kentucky team, and I got to say, I thought it was basically a coin flip game against Florida. I did pick Kentucky to win, but they were clearly the better team. They dominated the line of scrimmage. Ray Davis went off 280 yards. They had 330 rushing. They dominated on defense. It was just a strong victory. The one aspect of it, though, that they need to get together in a hurry because they get the wide receivers to do damage is Devin Leary is not looking that great. And he didn't look that good in this game. So I will just kind of throw that at the Kentucky side to say everything looks good except your quarterback. And we know that he can be good. So this is a good challenge for this Georgia team for sure.
It is, and I think you hit it, right there as far as Kentucky's, chances in this contest, are concerned. They're going to have a solid game from Devin Leary. I mean, as good as the Wildcats were running the football last week, and Ray Davis, hell of an effort. 280 yards. Leary can't run the football. He's not a running quarterback. That, again, kind of getting back to what I talked about earlier. That's where Georgia really was burnt on quarterbacks making perimeter plays and Georgia not be able to set the edge, on defense. With Kentucky, there's no shock what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to smash them out. They're going to try to roll over you. I think that we'll see what happens. Georgia will be able to kind of, maybe focus more on those interior runs and try to, and maybe be able to slow, Davis down maybe a little bit better. And I think that's going to probably a relief to some of those linebackers, knowing they won't have to worry about Leary, running around the edge. So we'll see what happens with that. But Leary, though, if Kentucky wants to win this ball game, he's got to have a solid game throwing the football because even with a Georgia defense that's, again, clearly not up to the level, I don't think, as they were the past 2 years, you still can't be one dimensional if you're Kentucky. You've got to throw the football to really be successful.
Anthony Dasher here breaking down the dogs for us. We always appreciate Anthony stopping by. You can check out his complete work there at ugasports.com on Rivals. Anthony, from a health standpoint, Georgia's pretty well good to go, especially considering they played 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, they, Bulldogs were able to get Javon Bullard back last week after missing 2 weeks from an ankle sprain. We already talked about Lab McConkey coming back. I expect he'll be able to play a little bit more this week. Kendall Milton is, Coach Smart, said it during the other SEC teleconference. He's feeling a whole lot better, and that's great news for our running back room that's really been hit with injuries this entire year. So they're getting a little healthier. They still got 1 or 2 guys that are banged up, not able to go, but it's a team that's in a lot better shape than it was 2 weeks ago.
Well, this schedule might be a little bit better than people gave it credit for to start the season. We'll see what Kentucky has between the hedges. I could see this thing going either way, not necessarily in terms of wins or losses. I'm pretty confident Georgia's going to win the game, but I could see a tight one, or I could see a one-dimensional Kentucky team not being able to keep up. So we shall see. All right, Anthony, we appreciate you stopping by as always.
My pleasure. Anytime.